the GM with full efforts. Thank you, President.
Questions. Question 1, Dr. LO Wai-kwok. President, in 2023, the fixed penalty for the offence of shopfront extension was increased to $6,000. However, some members of the public have reflected that law enforcement officers have not issued FPN's fixed penalty notices in accordance with the fixed penalty public cleanliness and obstruction ordinance when enforcing the law, but have instead instituted prosecution by way of summons under the summary offences ordinance. If a defendant pleads guilty by letter and the court accepts the plea, the fine imposed under the magistrate's ordinance will not exceed $2,000. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1, of the respective numbers of FPNs and summonses issued by the government for the aforesaid offence since the increase in the fixed penalty, along with the respective amounts of fines involved, the respective numbers of first-time and repeated offenders among these cases, how many times each repeated offender has committed the offence, and the amount of fines imposed on each occasion, the number of convicted persons sentenced to a fine of $6,000 or more or to imprisonment, and the fines and terms of imprisonment imposed. 2. Whether it has regularly reviewed the criteria for issuing FPNs and summonses by law enforcement officers, including how discretionary powers are exercised. If so, of the details, if not, the reasons for that. And 3. Whether it has studied ways to ensure proportionality between penalties and offences, as well as consistency in sentencing in the course of the enforcement and adjudication of the aforesaid offence, and further explored the possibility of increasing the penalty to enhance its deterrent effect, including the introduction of a progressive fixed penalty system. If so, of the details, if not, the reasons for that. Secretary for Environment and Ecology. President, shopfront extension not only affects road access and environmental hygiene, it also causes nuisance to pedestrians and traffic. It is one of the environmental, hygiene, and street management issues of major concern to the public. At present, if the FAHD found shopfront extension situation during inspections, the offenders would be issued with FPNs in accordance with the Fixed Penalty Public Cleanliness and Obstruction Ordinance, Chapter 570, or prosecuted for obstruction of public places under the Summary Offences Ordinance, Chapter 228. To more effectively sustain environment cleanliness, we have conducted a comprehensive review on environmental hygiene-related legislation and put forward relevant amendments. At the end of 2023, the fixed penalty level for shopfront extension, among other offences, was increased from $1,500 to $6,000, and the maximum fines which may be imposed by the court was raised from level 2, $5,000, to level 4, that is $25,000. If shops made repeated violation within a short period, the FAHD can issue multiple FPNs to further increase the cost of non-compliance. After the new penalty has taken effect for a year, the number of fixed penalty notices issued against shopfront extensions was 90% less than that in the previous year. In 2024, we further introduced the second stage legislative amendments to enhance enforcement effectiveness and efficiency, including introducing new clauses on shopfront extension under the Public Health and Municipal Services Ordinance, Chapter 132, allowing FEHD to require shops to remove obstructing articles without requiring police presence, and in cases where no owners of articles have come forward, the department to remove the articles. The amendments were passed by the LegCo after its third reading on 8th of May this year and will take effect on 17th of August. My response to the questions raised by Dr. LO Wai-kwok is as follows. 1. We increase the fixed penalty levels and maximum penalty the court may impose for obstruction of public places in 2023. Since the new penalty level took effect until 31st of March this year, the FEHD issued 1,593 FPNs of $6,000 each against retail shops causing obstruction of public places. The FEHD does not maintain a record of individuals receiving multiple FPNs. During the same period, FEHD issued summonses to 29 offenders involving 36 prosecutions, of which 32 cases have been concluded with convictions. The fines range from $300 to $6,500, with 5 cases of $6,000 fine or both. Among the 29 offenders, 4 had committed violations for 2 to 5 times, with fines ranging from $500 to $6,500. 2. In general, enforcement by FPNs is targeted at cases which are simple, straightforward, clear-cut, and capable of being easily established, such as when shop operators were caught red-handed and admit to illegal shopfront extension. Where a case is contentious, more serious, or complicated, they would be prosecuted by issuing summonses, such as when shops causing obstruction are also suspected of deploying staff to conduct illegal hawking activities on the street outside the shop, thus involving also illegal hawking offenses or involving repeated offenders. Sometimes enforcement officers cannot easily identify the offenders of shopfront extension on site and need further investigation. Some cases also require police assistance, such as when offenders refuse to show their IDs and or assault enforcement officers. Some people also obstruct and impede officers in discharge of their duties in a deliberately abusive manner. In these situations, enforcement officers will issue summonses or even make arrests and refer the cases to the court for judgment according to evidence. The FEHD has extensive experience in handling shopfront extension cases and has established guidelines and provided training for frontline staff. Frontline staff will, according to the guidelines, make prosecution decisions based on the actual circumstances and specific evidence of each case and report to supervisors according to the guidelines. Currently, 98% of shopfront extension by retail shops are handled by issuing FPNs. I have personally reviewed all the 36 summons cases. Among them, 31 cases involve more than one offense requiring handling by summonses. 3 cases involve disputes requiring police assistance. 1 involved a repeat offender who had previously received 18 FPNs, and another involved serious large-scale obstruction. All these cases complied with the enforcement guidelines. 3. During the first stage legislative review, considering that the number of FPNs issued for obstruction of public places nearly doubled from 2019 to 2021, from about 7,600 to nearly 14,900, and the number of complaints increased from about 15,000 to over 23,500 during the same period, we increased the penalty levels to strengthen the deterrent effect. As a result, as mentioned earlier, since the new penalty levels took effect at the end of 2023, there has been notable improvement in shopfront extension situation. In light of this, when taking forward the second stage legislative amendments, we consider that there is at a stage no need to introduce a progressive penalty system. We can first observe the overall effect of the legislative amendments in deterring shopfront extension. If necessary, we can further review whether to introduce progressive penalty system or further increase the maximum penalties that courts may impose in future. As regards the penalties imposed for cases prosecuted by summonses, the court makes judgment according to the circumstances of individual cases. Prosecution officers will provide necessary information to the court, including case details, conviction records of offenders, and relevant case statistics. To better assist the court in making judgments, the FEHD will explore with the Department of Justice whether there is room for improvement in how the prosecution presents cases and provides information. In addition, if the penalty of an individual case is clearly too lenient, the government will seek the court's review through the Department of Justice. Thank you. Dr. Lo Wai-kwok. President. In the main reply, it is said for the new $6,000 fine after it has taken effect until 31st of March this year, the FEHD issued 1,593 fixed penalty notices of $6,000, and summonses were issued to 29 offenders involving 36 prosecutions, of which 32 cases have been concluded with convictions. The fines range from $300 to $6,500, with 5 cases of $6,000 fine or above. That is 27 of the cases, For the 27 convicted cases, they have fines less than $6,000. It also shows that summons cases would receive lower fines than FBN cases. It is said when the penalties are clearly too lenient, the government will seek the court's review through the Department of Justice. That's why I want to ask the Secretary. For the 32 cases that have been concluded with convictions, has the administration asked for a review because the sentences were too lenient? Thank you, Secretary. I would like to thank Dr. LO Wai-kwok for his questions. For FBN cases and our general enforcement strategy, we want to improve the situation for shopfront extension. As I said in my main reply, we have increased the fines and we have seen a significant improvement in the situation. Whether it's in the form of issuing of summonses or the issuing of FPNs, we have seen the numbers of the issuances go much lower. It's just 10% of the previous figures. So we have more or less achieved our purpose with our adjustments. I understand the members' concern, however. For the issuance of summonses, if we have lower fines, that may be a problem. But I think as I said earlier, for certain cases, we must issue summonses. They cannot be dealt with by way of FPNs for these cases. The penalties being different may raise concern, including whether our officers have abused powers. Maybe there are some advantages involved. But we have reviewed the cases, all of the cases, and complied with the enforcement guidelines. We have seen no signs of abuse of powers of officers. Notwithstanding this, there may be room to review the difference in penalties. We are actually doing something already. As I said earlier, if the sentencing is too lenient, we will seek a court's review, and the FEHD is currently seeking review of a court case for a repeated offender that is being dealt with at the moment. And we'll see if we will adopt other approaches if necessary, depending on the results. Also, as said in the main reply, regarding the provision of information to the court, we'll see if there's any room for improvement as well, so that the court can better understand the seriousness of the specific cases. We do note that for summonses issued under the Summary Offences Ordinance, some may opt to plead guilty by letter. We think it may not reflect the seriousness of the cases. Recently, we amended the Public Health and Municipal Services Ordinance Chapter 132 to introduce new clauses on shopfront extension. And after they take effect on 17th of August, we will issue summonses under the relevant provisions, and one must attend court to make a plea for the summons. For the defendants, because they have to attend court, they have the time cost. they will not be able to do business during those hours. It will, in turn, increase the operation costs and the deterrent effect against shopfront extension. Thank you. Mr. Shu Ka-fai. Thank you. After the new legislation comes into effect, we have seen that the number of FPNs issued against shopfront extension was 90% less than that in the previous year. And we can see the fines range from $300 to $6,500. I think the circumstances surrounding each case is different. Some may warrant some leniency. And we can see the figures have decreased by 90%, and we have seen a decrease in the number of complaints. We need to understand the difficulties faced by the retail sector. With visible improvement in the situation, would the Secretary consider for the loading and unloading of goods there can be some leniency even for some hawking activities? Can you exercise some leniency for the benefit of the retail sector? Thank you. Secretary, I thank Mr. Shu Ka-fai for his questions. We have exchanged our views on multiple occasions. I emphasize again that our aim is to improve the situation of shopfront extension, to facilitate business or the operations of the retail sector. We have a consensus here. I can assure you for the loading and unloading of goods, the enforcement officers will be reasonable when dealing with these situations. They will not mechanically enforce the law. Please rest assured, the enforcement officers will enforce the law reasonably. Thank you. Mr. Yang Wen-kit, thank you. Since the first stage legislative amendments, we have seen the FPN fines increase to $6,000, and we have seen the number of complaints decrease significantly by 30%, and the seized goods decreased by 60%. We have seen visible results indeed. And we have seen recently more legislative amendments allowing cameras to be worn by enforcement officers. Would you consider installing CCTV cameras at black spots or even making use of mainland technology to combat shopfront extension? So for repeat offenders, we can perhaps then implement the progressive penalty system. Thank you. Secretary, I thank Mr. Yang for his questions. How we can make use of technology and digitalization to enhance enforcement efficiency, and how we can reduce manpower through such, and how we can protect our officers. We are promoting the use of technology and digitalization. I was asked whether there are any plans to have cameras installed at black spots. We do have such plans. As I said before, at the next stage, we will install CCTV cameras in more locations. We want to double the number of cameras we have at the moment, and then we will gauge the effectiveness of the cameras. We will also have body cameras worn by enforcement officers. We can see with hawker regulation that has really helped. That has helped reduce disputes. It has also enhanced protection for frontline officers. We are considering to expand the arrangement to officers who would enforce the law against shopfront extension. We are also exploring the use of latest technologies to enhance enforcement efficiency and reduce manpower. The FAHD will continue to explore different options. Thank you. Mr. Stephen Ho, I note that with the legislative amendments, we see significant improvement in the shopfront extension situation, but I see the figures that are alarming. For the 5,000 cases, there are only 36 cases with convictions. Well, only 32 of them have concluded with convictions. The fines range from $300 to $6,500. And for the 29 offenders, 4 had committed violations for 2 to 5 times, with fines ranging from $500 to $6,500. I'm not asking the government to review all of these 29 cases, but for the 1,500 odd cases that have already committed shopfront extension, or for the controversial cases, the large-scale obstruction cases, they will only be given a fine of $500. Wouldn't that just be a waste of the court's time? Can the government work with the DOJ to tell the court that the profit would exceed $500 already, so that the court will hand out harsher fines, so that there would not be essentially this very light sentencing? Thank you. Secretary, under the basic law framework, courts have independent judicial powers. So how we can communicate with the court, we need to exercise prudence. In handling such cases, after the legislative amendments take effect, we will not allow for pleading guilty by letter for summons cases. That will increase the time cost of defendants. We are also communicating with the Department of Justice to see how we can provide more comprehensive information to the court to reflect the background of the cases, the seriousness of the cases. And in the end, we should be able to achieve an increase in the fines handed out by the court to reflect more accurately the seriousness of each case. And for the sentences that are indeed too lenient, we will seek the court's review or even appeal the cases so that we can get more accurate penalties for cases. What answers of yours have not been answered? The speaker's microphone is not on. The secretary said for the providing of information, we need to tell the court the minimum fines. $6,000 is actually a minimum fine, isn't it? Secretary, do you have anything to add? As I said, we will see how we can better provide information to the Department of Justice. Question to Professor Chan Wing-kwong.
President, it has been reported that earlier on, a private healthcare facility providing vaccination and health checkup services was suspected to have closed down, resulting in customers who had purchased prepaid services not being able to use such services, with no refund arranged for them. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1. Whether it knows the current number of private facilities providing healthcare-related services, and among them, the number of those which have obtained PHF licenses; 2. Of the number of complaints received by the government in the past 3 years involving private facilities in providing healthcare-related services, as well as the substance of and the follow-up actions taken on such complaint; and 3. As the government has reportedly set up an interdepartmental task force to follow up this incident of suspected closure, and the chief executive has also announced a review of the existing regulation of PHFs, of the specific details of the government's work in respect of the review, and as well as the measures in place to step up regulation so as to further protect the rights and interests of consumers. Secretary for Health. President, upon consultation with the Security Bureau and the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau, the Health Bureau provides a consolidated reply to the question from Mr. Professor Chan as follows. Recently, the suspected sudden closure of a company providing medical-related services, including vaccination and health checkup services, has impacted people who have purchased prepaid services. In response, the government set up a dedicated interdepartmental team on the 2nd of May to ensure that the cases are handled as soon as possible and that the people affected receive assistance. This dedicated team comprises representatives from the SB, the CEDB, the Hong Kong Customs and Excise Department, the Hong Kong Police Force, the Department of Health, and the Consumer Council. The customs and the police have been investigating the incident to find out whether the trade descriptions ordinance and other criminal offences are involved. On the 7th of May, the customs arrested a director and the company secretary of the company concerned. It is alleged that they breached the trade description ordinance. They allegedly wrongly accepted payments as part of their commercial practices in the course of selling services. Law enforcement agencies. So such practice will be investigated by the law enforcement agencies, and they will continue to take statements from the people who made a report with a view to gathering evidence, while the Consumer Council will also continue to contact the company concerned in order to handle the complaint by means of conciliation. To ensure access to proper medical support for the people affected, the DH has set up a designated hotline, an email address, and instant chat messaging channel for inquiries from locals and non-locals. It provides health advice on vaccinations and also assists parents in arranging vaccination for their children under the Hong Kong Childhood Immunization Program at the maternal and child health centers. Eligible children, mainly Hong Kong residents, are entitled to free vaccinations, while non-eligible children will need to pay the standard fees. People seeking information can also seek information on how to receive other vaccines. The Primary Healthcare Commission has already engaged with family doctors and healthcare facilities to confirm that there is a stable supply of vaccines in the private sector and has reminded family doctors listed in the primary care directory to update their practice information. The PHCC has enhanced the search function of the PCD for the public to seek medical attention. After learning that the company concerned had used the lab services of a local private hospital, the DH had also took the initiative to contact the hospital and offered assistance in delivering the lab report to the doctor so that relevant cases could be followed up. The DH has also reached out to the registered professionals, such as the radiological technologists. The DH invited them to get in touch with the DH for assistance if they cannot deliver the reports to the referring doctors from the company concerned. This instance shows that the operation of PHFs involves not only the professional standards of medical services, but also other aspects such as commercial practices. For the government, it must leverage various legal tools at hand to safeguard public interest in a more effective and comprehensive manner. On the prepayment mode of consumption involved in this incident, currently, various laws in Hong Kong protect consumer rights and interests. Among others, the TDO covers goods and services. It prohibits traders from subjecting consumers to unfair trade practices. The government has noted the suggestions from the community on how to offer better protection to consumers on prepayment for goods and services. Such ideas include introducing a statutory cooling-off period and limiting the maximum period of prepayment contracts, etc. The CADB has commenced a study taking into account factors such as the economic environment, the operating situation of the industries, as well as the complaint and enforcement statistics, with the view to formulating appropriate strategies to strengthen the protection of consumers' rights and interests. On the regulation of private healthcare facilities. On this front, the government has enacted the Private Healthcare Facilities Ordinance, Cap 633 in 2018, to regulate PHFs. The law's primary objective is to ensure that premises providing medical services comply with the stipulated facility and safety standards, and also to monitor the quality and price transparency of medical services as appropriate. The government has been implementing the regulatory regime for various types of PHFs in phases under a risk-based approach. The implementation progress has been affected by the COVID-19 epidemic. Still, the provisions on hospitals and day procedure centers, or DPCs, under the ordinance have already come into full force. As of the 30th of April 2025, there were a total of 14 licensed private hospitals and 259 DPCs. On clinics and small practice clinics, the Health Bureau follows the plan to implement the regulation for PHFs in phases and will submit the commencement notices to the Legislative Council today, that is, the 21st of May, for Gazetto on Friday, that is, the 23rd of May, and tabling at the legislative meeting next Wednesday, that's the 28th of May, that's for negative vetting, to commence the relevant provisions. Once these provisions take effect, a license will be needed for operating a clinic, and licensees must at all times comply with the ordinance, license conditions, and codes of practice issued by the Director of Health. Now, for small practice clinics, meaning clinics with no more than 5 registered medical practitioners or 5 registered dentists that also meet specific conditions under the ordinance, operators must ask the director for a letter of exemption from obtaining a license to allow enough preparation time for the trade. And to tie in with the publicity arrangement, the DH will begin to accept applications from the 13th of October this year. More accurate figures on PHFs can then be collected. At this stage, the DH does not have the number of clinics and SPCs. The government also plans to further implement Section 92 of the ordinance after the clinic licenses and letters of exemptions for SPCs come into force in order to enhance regulation by prohibiting the use of titles or descriptions by individual unlicensed premises which may mislead the public into believing that medical services are provided there. The government has also set up the Committee on Complaints Against Private Healthcare Facilities under the ordinance in 2020. The committee has received 93 complaints over the past 3 years. As of the 13th of May 2025, cases considered and concluded stood at 78, with another 15 under investigation. The complaint mainly involved issues related to professional practices of healthcare professionals, staff performance, and communication issues of the facilities, as well as administrative procedures. Thank you, President. Professor Chan Wing-kwong. Thank you, President. I also thank the Undersecretary for her reply. The main reply says that on October 13th this year, the DH will start accepting applications for letters of exemptions from SPCs and clinics. I welcome that. This will further enhance regulation of PHFs. Many groups claim they provide medical services on the market. Some are licensed while others are not. Some groups have registered doctors with them, but that's not the case for others. The public may not be savvy with looking up a clinic or place on the directory of registered PHF, and people cannot tell what's a recognized or proper medical facility. So what steps would there be to further regulate the licensed PHFs to safeguard the rights of consumers and patients? And how do we do this to also protect the reputation of our medical professional? Professor Chan Wing-kwong. I thank Professor Chan for his question. Regulating private medical services requires a whole set of legal tools. Now we have Cap 633, Section 92 of that ordinance says that you need the prior written approval from the Director of Health. Otherwise, no group can use certain titles or descriptions. That's under Schedule 8, such as words such as medical care, clinics, etc. Section 92 also contains descriptions. So you provide services on the premises. You cannot just use those labels on a whim. This is to make sure criminals cannot mislead the public into thinking that on those premises they can access medical services. Now, once we have the regulatory regime on clinics and small practice clinics in place, we will start implementing Section 92. We will consult stakeholders. We will amend the terms under Schedule 8 to enhance the protection. PHFs aside, we also have other regulations in place for healthcare professionals, such as the medical registration ordinance and nurses registration today. We also have ordinances for Chinese medicine practitioners and also supplementary healthcare professionals. On protection for consumer interests and rights, we also have the trade descriptions ordinance and also an ordinance on problematic advertisements. This is to ensure we can safeguard the medical services available. Ms. Chen Hao-yan. It's important to regulate private medical services. But let's look at the license application for day procedure centers. So you open the application and then you see the first batch of licenses into force. It takes a year and then it takes another 2 years for the next step to happen. And now we have way more clinics and SPCs than day procedure centers. Now we just heard about this timeline. Starting from October the 13th, application will start. So when will we see the first batch of licensees in place? How long will it take? And in the meantime, those clinics may engage in commercial operations, and there may be gray areas. Secretary. So application will start on the 13th of October. So those SPCs will have to apply to the Director of Health. And then in December, those licenses will take effect. Now, the member will wonder, why take 12 months? Because clinics come in all sizes. Some are larger than the others. We have to give the industry time to get the papers ready. And in the meantime, we also want to have a discussion about what terms to include into Schedule 8. And that's why the whole process will take 12 months. Professor Priscilla Leung. Which question went unanswered? So what will be done in the 12-month period to make sure such incidents don't happen again? Acting Secretary. The company concerned this time is simply problematic for its commercial practice, not for its professional practice. Now, we don't see any breach of the professional standards. But then when it comes to the commercial practice, there may be a breach of the Trade Descriptions Ordinance. So we'll have to take a holistic view of the incident. The member does have a point, though. Clinics start applying for a license or exemption. So some such organizations may disappear. And then the more detailed requirements may apply, say, when these organizations close. Now, for a licensed clinic, they have to let the Department of Health know before they close down. And with the commencement of the provisions, there will be more requirements. Professor Priscilla Leung. As a legislative member, I've been following up on different cases involving prepaid services. We've got the case with the fitness chain, California, and also with the dental chain. The sums involved may be hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars. I had this patient halfway through his dental implant procedure, and then the chain vanished. So we have the involvement of the Consumer Council and the Trade Descriptions Ordinance. But that's not good enough for consumers, because we're talking about prepaid medical services. For a fitness chain, you simply lose your gym membership. You go to the customs, and that's it. But then for healthcare, we need a healthcare department to act. So we're talking about a prepaid service contract. We need a cooling off period. We need a cap on the prepaid amount. We need an indemnity fund. So say we have the protection of wages upon insolvency fund. Healthcare is so important for people. This time it's just about vaccines. I have dealt with a case where a patient halfway through his dental procedure was left holding the baby. So can the acting secretary address the concerns of consumers and the public? Thank you, President. Now, on regulating the prepayment mode of consumption, I want to tell you about the work we've done. As we have said in the main reply, the CEDB has started the work. So we're considering the experience of different jurisdictions, and we have looked at their practices. We're also examining the operation environment of the relevant industries. And we're also exploring the challenges for law enforcement agencies, say, gathering information. Where can we amend the TDO? Where can we put in more flesh to enhance the effectiveness of law enforcement for our customs officers? Members have also brought out the suggestions made in the past, such as a cap on the period or amount or bringing in a cooling off period, we will be considering these ideas. We also have to weigh with care the pros and cons of these ideas. We want to protect consumer interest and right. Meanwhile, we also have to spare a thought for businesses and the overall impact on the economy. So we will work at speed to come up with an appropriate strategy. We will conclude the study as soon as we can. Sorry, which question went unanswered? I mentioned prepaid medical services in particular. Will there be a better regime to protect such services? I need a reply from the Undersecretary for Health. Acting Secretary for Health. Thank you. Now we have CAP 633. This regulates the premises and the safety standards. Now as for commercial practice, that falls under the Trade Descriptions Ordinance. As the Undersecretary for Commerce and Economic Development said, for prepaid services, we have to consider the situation of each industry. Now, for certain private healthcare body or private hospital, there may be prepaid services for radiotherapy for cancer. You miss that window, you cannot help the patient. So any discussion of prepaid services will have to take into account different factors. For vaccines, for example, this is different from radiotherapy or chemotherapy. So we have to bear in mind the different circumstances out there. Ms. Connie Lam. Thank you. Now for this particular incident, victims approached me. As far as I know, only the victims of 2 banks have received the refund. So I wonder if there is a specific timetable. Do we have a timetable for these companies offering vaccine and health checkups? When can we see a cooling off period? And can we have an escrow arrangement for consumers, especially for people accessing healthcare services? Acting Secretary. Thank you. This question is similar to the one raised by Professor Leung. Now for CAP 633, the focus is on service quality and safety. As for commercial practice, that matter falls under the TDO. As the Undersecretary just said, we have to bear in mind the situation of each industry. In the upcoming study, we will also consider those factors. Thank you, President. Mr. Edmund Wong. There are medical centers and medical groups, they offer prepayment plans, and those services cover vaccines. There are also Chinese medicine clinics offering prepaid packages. We just heard from the administration that there would be a review of the prepaid services. I welcome the Acting Secretary's remarks. Now, given what has happened, we're talking about professionals offering services. Business is struggling. As we regulate the sector, we should also bear in mind these professionals' situation. Now, how can we help those professionals, those healthcare professionals, navigate these times? How can we ensure both regulation and development for the profession? Undersecretary for Commerce and Economic Development. In terms of assistance for SMEs or small and medium enterprises, now we also work with the Trade and Industry Development Department. We take a range of measures. Now we have the BUD Fund. There are different support schemes for SMEs. Now there are financing schemes, loan schemes for different industries, including the healthcare industry. We help them with cash flow. Hopefully, we can take pressure off them. Thank you, President.
Question 3, Mr. Edmund Wong. Thank you. President, the abolition of the use of the accrued benefits from employers' mandatory contributions to the Mandatory Provident Fund (MPF) to offset severance payment and long service payment, the abolition for short, took effect on the 1st of this month. The government has indicated earlier that it was not worried that the arrangement would trigger a wave of layoffs. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. As there are views pointing out that the current business environment is far worse than before, whether the government will conduct again a comprehensive assessment of the impact of the abolition. For example, whether it will trigger a wave of layoffs, if it will, of the timetable, if not, the reasons for that. 2. As the subsidy scheme for abolition of MPF offsetting arrangement will last for 25 years, when the government plans to conduct a review to ascertain that the funding of the scheme will be sufficient to meet the long-term needs, whether it will consider entrusting the funding to the Hong Kong Monetary Authority for investment to generate steady returns, thereby obviating the need to seek approval from this council for supplementary provisions. And 3. As it has been reported that the authorities have earlier on conducted a consultation on raising the minimum and maximum levels of income for MPF contributions, whether the government will, in light of the overall business environment and the impact of the abolition, consider putting the adjustment to the income levels on hold, if so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. Secretary for Labour and Welfare. President. After years of discussion and refinements, the abolition of the arrangement of using the accrued benefits from employers' mandatory contributions under the MPF system to offset employee severance payment and long service payment, that is, the abolition to improve employees' retirement protection, has garnered a general support. The abolition took effect on the 1st of May this year. On the same day, the government launched the 25-year subsidy scheme for abolition of MPF offsetting arrangement, the subsidy scheme for short, with a financial commitment of $36.6 billion to alleviate employers' financial burden and assist them to adapt to the change. My reply to the question is as follows. 1. The abolition will not lead to staff dismissal due to significant increase in the operating cost. As a reference, past data shows that the total sum of SP severance pay and LSP long service payment offset accounts for only 0.5% of enterprises' total wage expenditure, while wage expenditure is only a fraction of the total operating expenses. Hence, the abolition is not a determining factor for cessation of business or staff dismissal. The government has been reiterating that staff dismissal prior to the abolition cannot save SP or LSP expenses because 1. Under the Employment Ordinance, the maximum amount of an employee's SP or LSP is $390,000. As the law stipulates that the abolition has no retrospective effect, an employer may still use the accrued benefits from their contributions during the whole employment period to offset SP or LSP incurred before the transition date, that is the 1st of May this year. The SP or LSP of newly hired employees, on the other hand, will build from scratch to the maximum amount of $390,000, and the sum cannot be offset by employers' mandatory contributions. 2. SP or LSP incurred from an existing employee's employment period pre-transition is calculated on the basis of the employee's wages of the last month before the transition date. Therefore, the amount of pre-transaction SP or LSP is locked and will not increase no matter how much longer the employee will be employed and whether there will be any increase in his salary afterwards. We emphasize that manpower is a valuable asset. We believe that termination compensation is not a major factor for an employer's consideration of dismissal. The Labour Department, LD, will continue to monitor the situation after the abolition. 2. In estimating the financial commitment of the subsidy scheme, the government has engaged an actuarial consultant. In arriving at the total sum, reference has been made to the offsetting claim of MPFA, that is the Mandatory Provident Fund Schemes Authority, the projected number of subsidy applications, and the number of SP-LSP involved, as well as the economic cycles during the 25-year subsidy period. The total subsidy payout depends on the actual number of applications and the amount of SP-LSP involved. The government will closely monitor the disbursement of subsidies and, where necessary, follow the established procedure to handle the financial arrangement. Since the subsidy ratio will decrease over time, the subsidy payout sum in the later part of the subsidy period will be less. It is premature to talk about the sufficiency of the funding at this point in time. When seeking funding approval from the Finance Committee in November last year, the government pledged to review the operation of the scheme 5 years after the abolition. The $33.6 billion approved by the Finance Committee in November last year is the government's maximum commitment amount that can be used. It is not allocated to the LD's account in one go. The Labour Department, in accordance with established procedures and based on the cash flow requirement in each financial year, will earmark funding from that year's budget. The funds will then be allocated to the department's account from the General Revenue account according to the scheme's disbursement scheme to meet payout expenditures. Unused balance of the commitment will remain in the government's fiscal reserve to generate investment income. Part 3. Under the Mandatory Provident Fund Schemes Ordinance, the MPFA is required to conduct a review of the minimum and maximum levels of relevant income for MPF contributions not less than once in every 4 years. The authority is conducting a review for the next review cycle, that is, 2022 to 2026. In conducting the review, the MPFA must, in accordance with the law, take into account the relevant employment earnings statistics and other relevant factors such as social and economic conditions, labor market conditions, business environment for enterprises, in particular SMEs, and impacts such as financial burden on employees or self-employed persons. The authority will submit the report to the government. The government will then carefully examine the report. Thank you. Mr. Edmund Wong. Thank you. I thank the Secretary for his main reply. In it, the Secretary said that they believe that the termination compensation will not be a main consideration for staff dismissal. Well, when someone runs a business, the aim is not to close the business or to fire someone. It's just like when you're a person, you want to survive and your goal is not to die. But there is a major economic change. This is an additional consideration for employers. Well, we see that a lot of medium-sized enterprises, say for example accounting firms or businesses in the catering businesses, they have encountered great difficulties. I'm sure that Peter Steele will have something to say to you in this regard as well. So in relation to the review of minimum and maximum levels of relevant income of MPF contributions, yes, indeed, we have to protect the rights and benefits of employees. But will you put a larger emphasis on employers so that the operating cost of SMEs will not be further increased as a result? Secretary, I thank the member for the question. In part 3 of my main reply, I said that the authority will, in accordance with the law, conduct a review of the minimum and maximum levels of relevant income not less than once in every 4 years. We're still waiting for a report. In the course of the review, they have to, in accordance with the law, consider a basket of factors as well as data. I think we have to wait for the authority to complete the review, submit the report. Then the government will, in accordance with the law, follow up. Mr. Kingsley Wong. Thank you. The basic expectation of the public is that the government will work in accordance with the established procedure. It is said that there will be a review on the minimum and maximum levels of relevant income no less than once every 4 years. However, the last time it was reviewed, it was 2013 and 14. Minimum is 7,100 and the maximum is 20,000, and it's then raised to 10,000 and 51,000. Now we have over 600,000 people who are earning over $10,000. And if there is an increase, that means that there will be an increase of about $1.15 million in retirement benefits. Well, there are people who will benefit from the subsidy from the government, so the review will have an impact on the benefit of employees. It was said that the minimum level will have to catch up with the lag. So I want to get a clear answer from the Secretary. Will the government strictly abide by the established procedure and not just at the maximum level of relevant income? As I've said, there is a statutory requirement under the ordinance. The authority is to conduct a review no less than once in every 4 years. The next review cycle is 2022 to 26. In addition to some data, there are relevant factors to be considered. That includes social and economic conditions, labor market conditions, business environments, especially that for SMEs. Having reviewed the data and factor, a report will be submitted to the government. That is, that it will be submitted to us. I'm still waiting for the report. After receiving the report, we will comprehensively consider it. We don't know what the recommendations are. We have to wait for the report from the authority. Then the government will, in accordance with the law, consider the report together with a number of factors. Mr. Cha Siu-chung. The MPF ordinance set maximum levels of relevant income for MPF contributions. This will alleviate the contributions burden. But at that same time, it says that there needs to be a review once every 4 years. A benchmark will have to be taken into consideration. That is the 90% percentile of wage distribution. I think it has struck a balance of contribution burden vis-a-vis maintaining the function of the MPF. The current maximum level, 30,000, was set in 2014. The level of Q4 last year was 56,000. That is from 30,000 to 56,000. The bigger the discrepancy, the less effective the MPF is for retirement protection. I want to ask, do you have a timetable to narrow the gap between the current maximum level and the statutory benchmark? There is a mechanical benchmark for the minimum and maximum level of relevant income under the ordinance. It is stated very clearly in the law. Objective data has to be taken into account. However, in addition to such factors, the law also says that there are other equally important factors that are not numerical. Say, for example, the social and economic situation, the labor market situation, and the business environment for enterprises. All these will have to be taken into account. In this cycle review, that is 2022 to 26, the authority will have to take into account relevant factors, data in accordance with the law, then submit a recommendation report to the government. The government will, under the statutory duty, consider the report and other factors comprehensively. We should not tip over any one side. Don't worry, we will do it step by step. We have to wait for the report from the authority. Then the government will do the work required. We will act in accordance with the law. Mr. Peter Shield. The direction to fight for the rights and benefits of employees by the Bureau is correct, but at the same time, you will have to strike a balance taking into account the business environment. I remember when the law was enacted, during the discussion, it was said that, times would be better after the epidemic. However, the business environment for a lot of SMEs are worse. It's worse. Well, I have some recommendations and a question. You need to step up publicity to tell Hong Kong employers that there is no need to fire anyone because it doesn't help. Please step up publicity in this regard. Now the dust is settled. You talk about a review. With a poor business environment, is there a possibility that the maximum level of relevant income may be adjusted downwards? We will continue to publicize the abolition via different media. This platform is a very good opportunity for us to say once again that the abolition has no retrospective effect. Employers will not benefit from firing their staff members. The SPs and LSPs before the 1st of May is still subject to offsetting. The level of wages of reference is that of the 1st of May. The amount will continue to accrue until the person is laid off when severance payment or long service payments are paid. So it brings no merit to dismiss the person, especially in the case that when the amount has accumulated to 390,000. Well, this person will be someone who is experienced. Firing them will not benefit you. Replacing that person with a less experienced one will not benefit the company either. We talk about the review of the minimum and maximum levels of relevant income. The most important thing is that different parties act in accordance with the law. The law talks about objective data as well as other factors. The first step is for the authorities to submit a report to the government. Then the government will have a comprehensive consideration of all the factors before making a decision. Mr. Tan Ka-piu. I am a non-executive director of the MPFA. So it's not appropriate for me to express my views in relation to the minimum and maximum levels. But the fact is that they have not been changed for over a decade. I thank the government for doing well in publicity. Employers agree that there is no benefit from dismissing staff early. So in this regard, the government has succeeded, but the unemployment rate has increased. It's now 3.4%. The secretary said that there's nothing to do with imported labor. But so then what has it to do with, especially in the construction and catering industry? The law is very clear, and we have launched extensive publicity. There is no merit from dismissing staff members early. So I don't think employers would do that. Well, the other matter is close to a lot of people's hearts. Yesterday, we have published the latest unemployment figure. It has risen to 3.4% from 3.2%. For some sectors, the percentage has increased, whereas for some others, the percentage has dropped. when it comes to major industries, say for example tourism, the government has put in a lot of resources to promote its development. As long as we keep our competitiveness, as long as we have emerging industries, as long as we have incoming visitors, then the different sectors will do well. Where April was a turbulent month. There was a huge uncertainty in the global situation. Now, things are clearer. In any event, we will do our best to promote economic development and inject impetus into the labor market. Mr. Lam Chun-sing. In relation to the minimum level of relevant income, I think the aim is to protect elementary workers so that they don't have to make contributions out of their income. Currently, the level is 7,100. It's been in place for a long time. I think the minimum amount is not controversial because employers will have to make contributions in any event. Just that if it's below that amount, then an employee doesn't have to make contributions. Will you draw reference from 50% of the median income to calculate the minimum level automatically so that this level will not lag behind the times? Under the ordinance, in relation to the review of the minimum and maximum levels as well as the factors to be considered, the provisions are clear. We have to act in accordance with the law. As the provisions are clear, say for example, a review no less than once in every 4 years and the procedures, then we should act in accordance with that.
Question for Mr. Ron Chan. President, it's learned that due to the prevalence of digitization and changes in the reading habits of members of the public, the number of visits to public libraries and the number of materials on loan have both dropped significantly in recent years, and quite a number of overseas libraries have gradually transformed themselves from conventional institutions for collecting and lending books into diversified spaces functioning as community centers with intelligent services. In this connection, will the government inform this council 1. Of the following information about public libraries for the past 2 years. 1. The number of circulations of physical books, e-books, and multimedia items and their year-on-year rates of change. 2. The expenditure on purchasing such items and its percentage in the overall library expenditure. 3. The number of visits. 4. The number of newly registered users. And 5. The number of readers borrowing physical materials. 2. Whether it has reviewed the functions and services of public libraries to ensure that the allocation of resources can meet the needs of the community. If so, the details, if not, the reasons for that. And 3. Whether it has drawn on the library models of other cities to push forward the modernization and transformation of Hong Kong's public libraries in terms of innovative design, application of intelligent technology, community services, and so on, as well as to expand their functions and services. If so, the details, if not, the reasons for that. Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism. President, my consolidated reply to various parts of the question raised by Mr. Ron Chan is as follows. Under the LCSD, the Leisure and Cultural Services Department, there are 71 static libraries, 12 mobile libraries, and 3 self-service library stations that offer round-the-clock services, providing free and comprehensive library services for the public. In the past 2 years, the number of visits to the libraries increased from 21.49 million in 2023 to 23.83 million in 2024. The number of loans of physical books increased from 28.75 million items to 28.97 million items, while that of multimedia materials increased significantly from 660,000 items to 617,000 items. On the other hand, as more people visited the libraries and borrowed physical books, the number of loans of e-books dropped from 2.56 million items to 2.32 million items. In 2023 and 2024, the number of newly registered readers was 43,000 and 38,000 respectively, while the number of readers who borrowed physical materials was 620,000 and 600,000 respectively. the expenditure on the acquisition of library materials maintained at about $100 million in the financial years of 2023-24 and 2024-25, accounting for about 7% of the overall expenditure of the libraries in the respective financial years. Libraries in different regions have been facing the challenge of declining patronage due to the availability of more free information online. To facilitate the sustainable development of the libraries, the LCSD has implemented the Strategic Plan of Libraries from 2020 to 2025 to enhance existing facilities and library networks, raise public awareness of the physical collection and e-resources, launch large-scale reading promotion activities to promote reading interests and expand readership, and enhance library services through the application of information technology. The libraries also conduct opinion surveys through annual reader liaison group gatherings to better understand the reading habits and needs of readers. At present, the LCSD enhances its library services on various aspects, including planning, library collections, services, and application of technology. When planning new library facilities, the LCSD will make reference to the experience of mainland and overseas libraries to make a library into a community gathering place. The demographics and needs of different communities will be taken into account when planning the functions, design, services, and facilities of libraries to ensure that library services will meet the needs of residents of different age groups. Taking Sham Shui Po Public Library commissioned in 2023 as an example, considering the greater number of young families in the district, a parent-child reading corner and a game wall are specifically provided in this children's library, where the facilities are tailor-made for paired reading by young readers and families. A leisure reading area is also set up in the adult library to provide a comfortable reading environment for patrons, and a Create Info Zone equipped with multimedia digital service facilities is provided for the youth. Besides, the library also caters for the needs of the elderly in the district by providing desktop video magnifiers in the newspapers and periodicals section to bring convenience to them when reading newspapers and magazines. On library collections, the LCSD keeps gathering and analyzing usage data of its library collections, including both physical and e-books, for understanding changes in reading habits and demands of readers, as well as introducing new library materials that meet the needs of the public. With the increasing popularity of e-reading, the libraries continue to enhance its acquisition of e-books, bringing an increase of over 60% in the e-book collection from 330,000 items in 2019 to about 540,000 items currently. The usage of e-books also rose sharply from 960,000 in 2019 to 2.32 million in 2024. Apart from the provision of book lending services in libraries, the LCSD libraries also offer outreaching services from time to time, such as block loan of library materials in the community to assist individual community organizations and housing estates with such demand in establishing community libraries for providing book services to their members or residents. Currently, 197 community libraries have been set up across the territory, including 2 located inside the community living rooms in Sham Shui Po. In addition, the libraries launch large-scale territory-wide reading activities and hold other activities such as book exhibitions, talks, workshops, and pop-up libraries during major events organized by the LCSD to promote library collections and e-reading to extend the reach to readers. Like public libraries in other advanced cities, the LCSD strives to enhance library services through the application of new tech and is developing a new smart library system. As an integrated library system, the new system supports the daily operation of all public libraries, including collection management, borrowing, and return of library materials and online e-resources, providing greater convenience to the public in using library services. Mr. Ronald Chen. Thank you, President. In the last paragraph of her main reply, the Secretary said the government is developing a new smart library system which supports collection management of libraries. For most libraries, the most time-consuming work that needs manpower is the compilation of different physical materials. In Shenzhen, Bao'an, there is a library that makes use of a smart system and robotics technology to sort the different materials. What kind of advanced functions do we see in the smart library system to reduce manpower and boost efficiency? Secretary, I thank Mr. Ronald Chan for the questions. The LCSD is developing a new smart library system to enhance library services. It includes the use of RFID radio frequency identification technology for central sorting, and it also involves the services of interlibrary transport of materials to boost efficiency. In our central library, there will be a central sorter to transport different materials to the different libraries to reduce the use of manpower and to speed up the efficiency of returning materials onto the shelves. Also, we are looking at an AI proposal to increase library services to offer more customized services for our readers. We will more effectively collect data from readers in terms of how they make use of our libraries so that more information can be provided to readers based on their needs. Also, based on the habits as well as the interests of readers, we will recommend different books. Also, there will be a chatbot reference as well as consultation services on our website. There will be a chatbot answering different inquiries of our readers as well. We hope that through these plans, our libraries will move with the times. Thank you. Mr. Chen Hao-feng. Thank you, President. The Secretary said in her major reply that there was a slight increase of the number of circulations of physical books. However, as we all know, e-books is the major trend. The positioning as well as the role of libraries may need to be reviewed as we move to a new era. Does the Secretary have a plan to comprehensively review the functions as well as the positioning of our libraries? For example, will there be more study rooms or rooms for research and learning so that we can make better use of our libraries? Secretary, I thank the member for the questions. The answer is in the affirmative. E-books have become more and more popular. As mentioned in my major reply, I said that our e-book collection from 2019 to the present, we have increased about 60% of our e-book collection. The actual figure is 57%. It is a sharp increase. After COVID, over the past 1 or 2 years, we saw that those who read in the libraries as well as those who borrow physical books, we have seen an increase in the number. And we also see a slight drop in the number of people who borrow e-books. So we still see the need of providing physical books. At the same time, we will enhance the provision of e-books. Our registered readers, they do not have to visit the libraries themselves to read our e-books. On the other hand, Mr. Chen just now mentioned about a review of our functions and positionings of the new libraries. We will definitely do so. Some old districts will be redeveloped. For example, the library in Wafu Estate. Currently, it is a simple and traditional small library. After Wafu Estate is redeveloped, including the 5 other estates, we will see an increase in terms of the population by twofold, and there will be more young families who will move into the estates. We will address and cater to the needs of young people in terms of their reading habits, and we will also cater to the needs of the elderly. Take the Shamshui-Po Library as an example. It is a new library which has just been completed for some time. There are different themes in the library which caters to different people's needs. And the future trend is that we will make use of technology. Mr. Kenneth Falk, I'd like to ask about outreach services. There are public libraries in every district. To promote reading, we should not only rely on the venues. Elderly people need to read as well. Take Canada as an example. There are staff who send books as well as CD-ROMs to elderly care homes so that elderly people with mobility issues, they can also read. This is a way to promote reading as well. My question is this: will the administration consider working with, for example, the Social Welfare Department as well as the 18 district care teams to promote reading for all in the community? Secretary, I thank Mr. Fogg for the questions. Our public libraries provide borrowing and lending services. We have been working with NGOs as well as different district community organizations through a neighborhood scheme, offer community-oriented library services. In the long run, we will allow block loan of our books. We will also deliver books to those in need. This can be part of the services we offer. Apart from the libraries, we have 197 community libraries with over 760,000 library items. They are in, for example, Hong Kong and Sham Shui Po living rooms. We have been lending our books to these community living rooms so that children living in subdivided units, they can read these books. Also, we've been working with 7 organizations or centers, such as elderly services centers as well as daycare centers. There are community libraries in these centers as well. I used to work for the housing department, and under the well-being scheme, there are plans to create more open spaces and provide more open spaces for local residents so that our mobile libraries can reach public housing estates. This is very helpful for housing estates with a lot of elderly residents because they need to only go downstairs to return their books. We want to go digital as well. For elderly citizens, they may be more familiar with reading physical books, so we will enhance our services in this regard as well. Ms. Maggie Chen, according to 2023 audit report, about $5.7 million of fees have not been charged by the libraries, and about $3.9 million are outstanding fines, and $1.8 million they are fees in relation to loss of materials. So how will the public libraries pursue the fines? Secretary, we are aware of this. The LCSD, after the publication of the audit report, has made use of a multi-pronged approach to pursue the outstanding fees. For example, starting from September 2023, we have stopped those who owe fines from borrowing books, and they can only owe fines for 30 days after the new measure. We'll also, through the Small Claims Tribunal, pursue the fines or recover the fines. We will also, through email services and notifications, as well as our mobile apps, notify our readers of the date of returning the book so that they can return the books on time so that they don't need to pay a fine. These measures have been effective, as at the end of March 2025, we see that outstanding fees have dropped to about $4 million. Compared to 2023, it represents a drop of 29%. We still have to work hard on this front. We have to review whether these existing measures are effective enough. If not, we may have to implement other measures to ensure that these fines can be paid as soon as possible. Ms. Lillian Kwok. I care about e-books. I appreciate the effort of the government. It looks like there is still room for improvement to increase the number of e-books in our libraries. I'd like to ask about people's reading habits. There are VR libraries in many places. They make use of VR technology and they place certain books or historical information in a room. Does the government have any plans in its future development of our library services to make use of VR technologies so that the collections of our public libraries can be lent to schools for use? I want to know if the government has any plans in this regard. Secretary, I thank Ms. Kwok for the questions. The LCSD has been through different activities promote STEAM, education. STEAM-related disciplines such as 3D printing, we have seminars to enhance young people's interests in innovative technology as well as the application of technology in their daily lives. Under the Blueprint for Arts and Culture and Creative Industries Development, we will review the functions as well as designs of our libraries, and we will address people's aspirations in this regard. I believe VR will help people enhance their knowledge in history and geography. We can, through images and the technology, allow people to have a better understanding and have more knowledge in these disciplines. I believe the LCSD will do better in this regard. Ms. Eunice Young. I think this gives us a very good opportunity for us to rethink the values of libraries in our communities. We see an increase in terms of the number of visits as well as the number of borrows or loans in physical books. Libraries could be a place for children, for example, to spend their time. As the government strives to promote our culture, will our libraries become a spot for photo taking or a tourist spot? Secretary, I believe the Hong Kong Central Library is definitely a place for photo taking. At the basement level of the Central Library, there are often exhibitions that showcases different artwork, for example. It's very attractive. In order for libraries to become a photo-taking spot, the architecture itself has to be attractive and appealing. As we plan for new libraries, we will see how, without increasing the construction costs, we can implement an innovative design for libraries. I mentioned about the library in the Waffle Estate to be redeveloped. It's a very good example we can look at. We can introduce a new design there. Library, after all, is a place for quiet reading. It shouldn't be too noisy.
Question 5, Mr. Michael TIEN. There are views that as the government is currently making vigorous efforts to develop the northern metropolis, it should expedite the implementation of various railway projects, such as the Hong Kong Railway linking Hong Shui Kiu to Hong Kong Island and the new cross-harbour railway between the coastal areas of Tuen Mun and Hong Kong Island. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. As the government has indicated earlier on that the coordination of railway projects by one single entity is conducive to maintaining cost efficiency, and that splitting part of the railway project works into a public works project may not be able to help enhance the efficiency of such a project. But there are views that adopting the public-private partnership or PPP approach in taking forward the railway projects, for example handing over to the government the infrastructure portion, which accounts for about 70% of the overall works, while the MPRC will take charge of the remaining portion of the E&M works, which accounts for about 30%, may expedite the progress of such works, and the government may also raise funds through bond issuance. And even if the debt to GDP ratio rises to 16% in future, Hong Kong's debt to GDP ratio will still rank about 160 among some 170 economies. Whether the government will proactively explore and implement the PPP option in this regard. And 2. Whether it will consider formulating a labour importation scheme specifically for the railway projects, under which mainland workers who travel on a same-day return basis and are not entitled to any local benefits will be imported and exempted from the restriction that their wages should not be less than the median monthly wages of local workers in comparable positions, so as to reduce the cost of such projects. If so, of the timetable. If not, the reasons for that. Secretary for Transport and Logistics. President, following the principles of infrastructure-led and capacity-creating, the government is pressing ahead with a series of major transport infrastructure projects in the northern metropolis to strengthen the connectivity among the various new development areas and with other districts, as well as to facilitate Hong Kong's better integration into the national development through the construction of cross-boundary infrastructure. The government is carrying out preliminary planning and study for the development of the Kao Yi Chau Artificial Islands, or KYCAI, and related strategic railway. The proposed strategic railway is primarily intended to enhance the connectivity of the artificial islands with the northern metropolis and the western part of Shenzhen, and its alignment and program will have to tie in with the planning of the artificial islands. After reviewing the priorities and overall strategy of the various land creation and infrastructure projects, the government considers that the development pace of the Kao Yi Chau Artificial Island could be eased. Separately, relevant departments are conducting a planning and engineering study on the near-shore reclamation in Long Gu Tan and the replanning of Tuen Mun West area, and the transport connectivity of the said area with other districts will be examined in the process. In consultation with the Financial Services and the Treasury Bureau, the Development Bureau, and the Labour and Welfare Bureau, our reply to the various parts of the question raised by Mr. Michael TIEN is as follows. 1. To ensure that the Northern Metropolis and other strategic infrastructure projects can proceed on schedule and benefit the economy and people's livelihood at an early juncture, the government will leverage market resources in a more flexible manner and adopt more diverse development models. All along, the government would formulate the most suitable implementation and financing arrangements of individual new railway projects, taking into account the distinct characteristics and specific circumstances of each project. Currently, railway projects are mainly implemented under the rail plus property model, which has proven to be effective. The government grants property development rights having regard to the funding gap of the project, while the railway company bears the commercial risk associated with the design, construction, operation, and maintenance of the railway. Under this arrangement, the railway company would coordinate the works for the property development as well as those for the railway, which could enable synergy among the stations, depots, and the property development, and also create incentive for the railway company to complete the railway projects and thus enhance the value of the property development as early as possible. Where circumstances warrant, the government does not preclude the possibility to provide financial support for new railway projects through or in combination with other means. In fact, there were railway projects being taken forward using other approaches. The current practice of having a single entity to implement a railway project ensures seamless coordination across all aspects of the project, from design to construction. This also helps ensure that the design of the works fully takes into account cost effectiveness, meeting operational needs while keeping costs under control. Splitting part of the works of a railway project into public works of the government might not be able to help enhance the efficiency of the works due to interfaces between the works, and would also increase the government's fiscal burden. With projects related to the Northern Metropolis being rolled out progressively, as well as other infrastructure projects with socio-economic benefits, the government will expand the scale of bond issuance correspondingly. Over the 5 years covered by the current medium-range forecast, the ratio of government's debt to GDP is expected to rise from the current 9.5% to 16.5%, which remains to be a prudent and manageable level. The actual amount of bonds to be issued by the government will take into consideration the prevailing fiscal position, market response, and work's progress. We will continue to adhere strictly to fiscal discipline and ensure the fiscal prudence of our overall bond issuance programs and sustainability of our public finances. The MTRCL has been playing a pivotal role in driving Hong Kong's development. We are aware of public concerns about the possible pressure on MTRCL's manpower and resource when taking forward multiple new railway projects simultaneously. The government has reminded the MTRCL's management of the need to strategically plan its treasury management and make financing arrangements through appropriate means, such as bond issuance having regard to its liquidity needs, so as to support the corporation's operation and continuous development. At the same time, MTRCL must strictly control the costs and compress the programs of its railway projects in order to enhance the financial viability of the projects. To enhance speed and efficiency in implementing railway projects, the government will optimize and streamline procedures through geo-innovation in policy and technology, so as to save construction time and manpower. Subject to local circumstances and existing legal framework, the government is also actively exploring ways to facilitate the use of mainland's construction methods and capabilities in constructing cross-boundary railway projects. In addition, when taking forward independent new railways or transport infrastructure projects, the government will consider introducing new entities in their implementation. This would not only help relieve the pressure on MTRCL, but also enable new entities to introduce innovative technologies and bring in more diverse financing sources. The existing labour importation scheme for construction sector allows principal contractors of eligible works contracts to apply for importation of labour. The requirements for importing labour under the construction sector scheme are formulated by the government in accordance with Hong Kong's labour policy. Principal contractors of railway projects may also apply for importation of labour under this scheme as needed. In the case of cross-boundary railway projects, the adoption of mainland construction teams would work better with the above-mentioned idea of leveraging the mainland's construction methods and capabilities and achieve maximum effectiveness. Taking the subsea railway tunnel of the Hong Kong-Shenzhen Western Rail Link at the Deep Bay as an example, it would be more efficient and cost-effective for the Shenzhen side to construct the tunnel by unidirectional tunneling method. The government will seriously study the implementation of specific arrangements for employment of mainland labour in cross-boundary railway projects in light of the project's unique nature. Thank you, President. Mr. Michael TIEN. Secretary, I thank you for your direct answer in my second part of the question. We need to relieve the government's financial burden. Now, according to experts, if we use mainland teams to construct the projects, we can achieve a 30% saving overall. Now, if that is realized, in the future, the Hong Kong Railway's cost will be much reduced. Now, it will connect Hung Shui Kiu with Hong Kong Island West. Now, under the co-location model, we can drastically reduce the cost on building the Hong Kong Railway and achieve commissioning as early as possible. Now we can, according to the experts, we can keep the two existing undersea locations by adopting the same design. Now this Hong Kong Railway will cross the border between Hong Kong and Shenzhen. So what is the progress of the study of this railway? Secretary. Now, there are 2 points. Now, preliminary speaking, by adopting mainland construction teams and construction methods, when building cross-boundary railway projects, we can achieve a 20% saving, and that is significant. Considering employing mainland labour, as suggested by Mr. Michael TIEN, we will consider the characteristics of cross-boundary rail projects and engage mainland teams whenever suitable. Concerning the Hong Kong Railway, which links Hung Shui Kiu with Hong Kong Island West, this is a strategic railway to serve the Kau Yi Chau artificial islands. Now, the alignments and the timetable depends on the planning for the KYC artificial island. Now, we will actively review the priority for various infrastructure projects and set an appropriate timetable. At present, we would first like to adopt a prudent attitude in taking forward the preliminary planning for KYC artificial islands. This is such a massive project. We need to be well prepared in the preliminary stage. In the future, when everything is ready, we will take the project forward. In terms of its connection with the Hong Kong Island West and the Northern Metropolis, we will consider the strategic transportation system altogether. Mr. Perry Yu. Thank you, President. Secretary, we need a diverse transportation system in Hong Kong to maintain our status as an international aviation hub. Now, I am glad that the Bureau is attaching much importance to connection between sea and land. There will be better connection between the high-speed rail and our airport so that more mainland visitors will fly via Hong Kong. Now, the KYC artificial island affects the planning of the future railways. Now, under the Traffic and Transport Strategy Study, the railway will pass by Sunny Bay and connect with the Airport Express and connect to the Hong Kong Island West. Now, according to the existing progress, when there is not a plan yet for the KYC artificial island, will the government first consider linking up Hung Shui Kiu and Sunny Bay, or connecting Chek Lap Kok by the Tuen Ma Line extension, so that more residents in the Northwest Territories and residents in the Bay Area will make use of the airport? Secretary, I thank Mr. Perry Yu for his questions. Now, the Hong Kong-Shenzhen Western Rail link will link up Hung Shui Kiu Ha-Chun NDA with Qianhai in Shenzhen. It will strengthen the connectivity in the innovation corridor. Now, as mentioned by Mr. Perry Yu, we will reserve flexibility for the design in the Hong Kong section and the Shenzhen section of the railway for northward and southward scalability. Now, concerning multimodal transportation and also enhancing the connectivity with our international airports, we adopt an open mind and we will proactively strengthen the connectivity. We will consider connecting the Hong Kong-Shenzhen Western Rail link with the Hong Kong International Airport. For example, can it pass by Sunny Bay? We will consider all possibilities. Now, the main section of the Western Rail link, that is from Hung Shui Kiu to Qianhai, there is a pressing need to take forward the project. At the same time, we will consider the possibility of an extension of the Western Rail link to the international airport. Now, besides railway, we will also consider other means of connection, for example, the smart green transportation system, or developing Hung Shui Kiu into a new generation of transportation hub so that it can extend its reach to the international airport. Mr. Chen Siu-hong. President, in the main reply, the Secretary mentioned that the government is actively exploring means to leverage the mainland's construction methods and capabilities in taking forward cross-boundary railway projects. Now, I support this. Now, there are different standards in terms of works and work methods. the mainland adopts very advanced methodologies. Now, the country has built a 160,000 kilometer long high-speed rail network, and they have adopted the highest standard. Now, it is time to review whether we can update our standard and align it with the country. Now, in the future, for railway projects, especially cross-boundary railway projects, in terms of alignment with Guobiao, the country standard, and the European standard, or even the GBA standard, will the government adopt a more proactive and aggressive approach in aligning our standard? Secretary, thank you, Mr. Chen, for your question. As you have said, the country is a great power in terms of modern railway construction. Cross-boundary railway projects are good opportunities for us to make use of the country's construction methods and capabilities to achieve cost saving and effectiveness. And also, we need to update our railways protocols and standards with time. Now, for cross-boundary railway projects, besides the Hongshui-Q to Qianhai section of the Hong Kong-Shenzhen Western Rail Link, there is also the Northern Link's extension, or Northern Link spur line. So we will do our best to speed up the implementation of these two rail projects. We will also strengthen our legislation. There are some ordinances in which we have identified room for choosing cross-boundary railway projects as pilot projects to adopt the country's railway building standards. And of course, we will attach top priority to safety in taking forward these projects. In terms of standards alignment, Hong Kong can become a showcase for aligning the railway building standards in the Bay Area. Now we have the ASTRI, which is responsible for construction technologies. It is now conducting studies on aligning building standards. At the same time, we can't ease off our pace in taking forward the two strategic railway projects I mentioned. Thank you. Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, President. In the main reply, the Secretary mentioned that the rail plus property model is still effective. I agree, but in face of our financial burden and developmental pressure, and also the rapidly aging population, despite the model still being effective, the benefits it brings have been much reduced. Now, there are many means of taking forward railway projects. So is it simply because of cash flow difficulty or other factors? I believe that both factors give play to the decision of adopting the rail plus property model. Now, even if we can split the construction part of the works project with the operation, in face of the economic downturn and the slumping property market, how can we attract investors to invest in railway or rail plus property projects? There is a big question mark. So on the government's part, the government needs to be more proactive in promoting economic development and increase the population size to bring more investment return to potential investors. So my question for the Secretary is, does the Secretary agree with my statement? Secretary. The question raised by Mr. Andrew Lam is a very broad question, which cannot be answered in a few minutes' time. In short, the MTRCL is now responsible for the Shiho-Wan Station, the Phase 1 project of the Hongshui-Q line, and so on. These are all taken forward by the rail plus property model. Now, in the previous terms of the government, multiple rounds of enhancements have been made to the rail plus property model. In taking forward key railway projects, these are key major railway leading to important areas like the Northern Metropolis, where there is no population yet, but with a huge potential. So I agree with Mr. Andrew Lam that we need to bring forward economic developments and population growth and take forward railway projects simultaneously. Second, at present, concerning one of the cross-boundary railway projects, that is the Northern Link Spur Line, the MTRCL is exploring ways to reduce the cost and also simultaneously taking forward the Northern Link Main Line and Spur Line to achieve economy of scale. Now, about bond issuance, we hope that the MTRCL would utilize its financing tools to strengthen its cash flow and collaborate with the government to take forward the design and developments of future cities. Thank you.
Last question seeking an oral reply, Mr. Frankie YICK. Thank you, President. There are views pointing out that although the United States, U.S. has been its ranking as Hong Kong's major important trading partner declined in recent years, the imposition of high tariffs on Hong Kong goods and the elimination of the duty-free de minimis treatment for small parcels continue to have a significant impact on Hong Kong freight and logistics sectors. Members of the sectors have predicted that the U.S. tariff trade war against China will lead to a sustained decline in Hong Kong's freight volumes and could trigger an immediate supply chain disruption crisis, and the measures taken under the 5 major strategies as indicated earlier on by the Secretary of Transport and Logistics will be difficult to see results in the short term. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1, whether it has assessed the specific impact of the tariff trade war launched by the U.S. to date on Hong Kong's freight and logistics sector, including sea, land, and air transport? 2. In order to make up for this shortfall resulting from the loss of the U.S. market and to consolidate Hong Kong's position as a regional logistics hub, of the short-term measures taken by the authorities to assist the logistics sector in accelerating the development of new markets, and 3. In response to cash flow problems faced by logistics companies due to shipment delays or cancellations caused by the tariff trade war, of the support measures put in place by the government, such as the consideration of providing low-interest loans to these companies to address their immediate needs. Secretary for Transport and Logistics. President, Hong Kong has long supported and upheld the multilateral trading system. The imposition of tariffs and other trade protectionist measures by certain countries not only disregards Hong Kong's status as a free port with zero tariffs, but also damages the global multilateral trading system. Such measures disrupt global supply chain, harming all parties involved, including the implementing countries themselves. As previously announced by the Chief Executive in response to the relevant developments, the government will strengthen its strategies in 7 areas, including to fully utilize or seize the opportunities in a country, China's development, and actively integrate into the national development, to strengthen international exchanges and deepen regional ties and cooperation, to accelerate industrial transformation, to intensify efforts to develop technological innovation, to vigorously advance international financial cooperation, to proactively attract foreign companies and capital to establish in Hong Kong, and to provide various support to help Hong Kong enterprises. Having consulted the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau and the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, Hong Kong MA, our reply to Mr. Frankie Yick's question is as follows. 1. Hong Kong recorded a 3.2% year-on-year increase in air cargo volume in the first quarter of 2024, reaching 1.16 million tons. Container throughput of our port also grew by 2.7% year-on-year to approximately 3.4 million 20-foot equivalent units. The observed growth in cargo volumes is believed to be attributable to shippers' urgency to ship goods ahead of the anticipated implementation of reciprocal tariffs. Recently, our country and the United States, US, have reached a provisional agreement to reduce bilateral tariffs for 90 days. It is expected that shippers will maximize shipments during this window. However, such volume growth is unlikely to be sustained. In fact, the negative impact of the reckless imposition of tariffs by the US on global trade will be far-reaching. The overall global trade volume is expected to fall, and the logistics industry will inevitably be affected. 2. In light of the new international trade environment, we must make preparation to avoid and mitigate risks while seizing new opportunities arising from the changing landscape. To this end, the Transport and Logistics Bureau will closely monitor developments, maintain proactive engagement with the trade, and lead Hong Kong's logistics sector to cope with challenges by adopting 5 major strategies. Firstly, we will explore emerging markets including the Middle East, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, while continuing our collaboration with the Hong Kong Logistics Development Council to promote Hong Kong's logistics advantages by conducting promotional visits to and exploring other markets along the Belt and Road. Secondly, we will strengthen collaboration with ports located in the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau Greater Bay Area and establish a comprehensive rail, sea, land, river intermodal transport system, thereby developing new cargo sources. Thirdly, we are actively studying the exemption of the import and export license requirements for certain products to attract more transshipment cargoes. Fourthly, we will deepen international port and shipping cooperation by pursuing digitalization and green and smart transformation of our port to enhance Hong Kong's port competitiveness. Fifthly, we will continue to further expand Hong Kong's maritime and aviation networks to diversify our markets and reduce reliance on the U.S. market. 3. The Hong Kong SAR government has been assisting small and medium enterprises, SMEs, in addressing challenges and maintaining competitiveness amid a complicated and ever-changing economic environment through various funding schemes and support measures. As regards alleviating cash flow pressure, the government has kept on enhancing the SME financing guarantee scheme so as to meet the financing needs of SMEs during economic downturn. Borrowing enterprises under the SFGS, including enterprises in the logistics sectors, are now allowed to apply for a principal moratorium arrangement for up to 12 months. The application period will last until 17th of November 2025, and the maximum loan guarantee periods of the 80% and 90% guarantee products will be extended to 10 years and 8 years respectively. At the same time, the partial principal repayment options will be offered to new loans so as to provide more repayment flexibility. The Hong Kong MA, together with the banking sector, introduced in April 2025 additional support measures to further assist SMEs in obtaining bank financing and in their upgrade and transformation. In addition, all the 18 participating banks in the task force on SME lending have reaffirmed their commitment to actively implement the 9+5 SME support measures launched by the Hong Kong MA and the banking sector in 2024. Referencing the principles under the pre-approved Principal Payment Holiday Scheme, the banking sector will continue to offer flexible repayment arrangements and deferment of repayment period. The total amount of dedicated funds for SMEs set aside by these banks in their loan portfolio has increased from $370 billion in October 2024 to more than $390 billion at present. As regards export credit insurance, further to the 2024 Policy Address Initiative on increasing the maximum indemnity percentage of the Hong Kong Export Credit Insurance Corporation ECIC to 95%, the ECIC already launched 3 more support measures on the 10th of April 2025, including extending the free pre-shipment cover for holders of the Small Business Policy SBP, offering a 50% discount on pre-shipment risks to cover premiums for non-SBP holders, and aligning the premium rates for new markets with those for traditional markets to assist exporters in tapping into new markets. ECIC will also provide 20 additional free credit assessment service on the buyers in the mainland, ASEAN, and Middle East, collaborate with various financial institutions to provide financing support for e-commerce, and providing credit insurance for export services relating to multinational supply chain to support Hong Kong export trade. Thank you, President. Mr. Frankie YICK. President, well, first of all, I thank the Secretary for laying down the support measures of the Hong Kong SAR, Hong Kong MA, and the banking sector for the SMEs in the logistics sector in paragraph 3 of the main reply. Members representing the business sector on the 8th of April this year met with the Hong Kong MA and the banking sector. We discussed how the banking sector can support the SMEs in the tariff trade war. Upon discussion, the Hong Kong MA released a press release announcing the 9+5 SME support measures. Now, I hope that the banking sector will provide support to the SMEs in terms of financing. However, without a clear guidelines from the Hong Kong MA, the banking sector could not, through their risk assessment or compliance, provide support to the SMEs. So I wonder if the Secretary will talk to the Hong Kong MA, asking them to provide clear guidelines to the banking sector, just like what happened during the COVID, to offer a principal moratorium arrangement for the SMEs in order to alleviate the cash flow pressure of the SMEs for enterprises that meet the relevant conditions, say if they have a good credit record. The banking sector could perhaps offer repayment deferment for these enterprises. Who will take the question? Undersecretary for Commerce and Economic Development. Thank you, President. I thank Mr. Yick for the follow-up question. According to my understanding, the Hong Kong MA and the banking sector already have rolled out measures specific to certain industries. For import and export, manufacturing, logistics sectors, the banking sector has already undertaken to defer some of the repayment period and offer bespoke credit products. For example, borrowers can repay by installments, and some of them enjoy principal moratorium. Earlier on, the Hong Kong MA and the banking sector established the task force on SME lending earlier on. Riding on Mr. Yick's comments, we can relay the relevant suggestions to the task force. The task force is trying to help the aviation, the logistics sector in solving their problems and applying for loans or obtaining other banking services. We will talk to the task force. Mr. Lee Shen-kun. Thank you, President. The Trump administration, since they've taken office, have been implementing unilateral arrangements to impose tariffs on many different countries. Many exporters and re-exporters are faced with significant pressure. They are worried that if their cargoes would be rejected by importers in the U.S. I'm glad that the Hong Kong MS rolled out various measures. That is, if the buyers become bankrupt, then the ECIC will, in accordance with the conditions in the policies, offer and damages and indemnity for Hong Kong exporters. Well, given the heightened tariffs, some buyers may request refund and return of their goods. For exporters that have taken out insurance with the ECIC, will they be protected? Secretary. Thank you for the question. The ECIC will continue to monitor the market situation. We have offered some pre-shipment support and we will continue to implement them. For exporters that have signed a contract, we recommend them looking into the conditions in the relevant agreements. Say, for example, if the tariffs continue to rise, which party in the agreement will be responsible for making the payment? Before signing the agreement, we ask the buyers and sellers to include such a clause in the relevant contract. Given uncertainties in the market, the ECIC will not tighten the maximum indemnity percentage. We will try to cater to the needs of the trade. Mr. So Chan Wing. Thank you, President. Because of our geographical and institutional advantage, Hong Kong has been playing an important role as a trade intermediary. Our trade and logistics sector prospered as a result. Last year, our total trade volume was $50 million, approximately $57 million are exported goods. This shows that 98% of goods exported from Hong Kong is not manufactured locally. They come from other places, such as the mainland. If the tariff trade war sustains and continues, it will deal a great blow to Hong Kong. So I have a question for the administration. Has the administration conducted an analysis on the impact on the trade and logistics industry given the 30% tariffs imposed on Hong Kong goods from the U.S.? Who will take the question? Undersecretary for Commerce and Economic Development. Thank you. As we have announced earlier on, given the tariff trade war, the impact caused to exporters and re-exporters in Hong Kong is rather minimal. As mentioned, we have many re-export trade in Hong Kong, and that would definitely be affected by the global economic environment. We will look into whether the goods bound for other places will be affected as well. We will expand our capacity. Say, for example, the chief executive led a delegation visit to the ASEAN and the Middle East earlier on. We will try to explore emerging markets to mitigate the risks. Dr. Hui Lee. Thank you, President. To cope with the logistics challenges and consolidate our status as a logistics hub, it's important for us to lower the cost. Smart logistics is key. And we have to develop smart warehouse as a result. So I wonder if the administration has any measures to encourage the trade to develop smart and innovative warehouse. Who will take the question? Secretary for Transport and Logistics. Thank you, President. I thank Dr. Lee for the question. For us to develop smart logistics, we promulgated the action agenda on modern logistics, and that's one of the key strategies that we have. In order for us to develop smart logistics and smart warehouse, we have a number of measures. Currently, in Kai-Ching Container Terminal, we have set aside space to allow logistics industry to develop multi-story buildings for modern logistics. We hope that smart warehouse operators would make use of these facilities. And we also have a third-party logistics subsidy scheme. Recently, we have improved the scheme. When trade practitioners purchase, install, systems related to smart logistics or products, we are going to offer some form of support to them. Thirdly, in the northern metropolis, near Hong Shui-kiu, we have set aside 30 hectares of land to implement this enterprise-led approach to attract logistics service operators to set up presence there to lead the development of the entire industry. This will allow us to develop towards high value added and smart logistics. Mr. Holden Chow, the Trump administration is definitely not reliable. Their strategies changes all the time. I think that over the long run, we must explore emerging markets and other markets apart from the U.S. Our country has just reached an agreement with the U.S. and some of the tariffs have been suspended. It seems that suddenly we are receiving more orders from the U.S. during this window. I wonder if the administration has looked into if the trade can cope with the sudden rise in the volume of orders. How should we cope with that? And will the price of logistics service increase as a result? Thank you, President. Secretary. Thank you, President. We are communicating with the trade very closely on this. I can share with you the current situation. On the aviation front, about 30% of our export, our re-export from our country to the U.S. Our air cargo capacity can be enhanced and adjusted because we have many flight routes and our flights are very frequent. It's easy for us to redeploy our flights, and we will adopt flexible arrangements to help exporters and re-exporters who need to send their goods to the U.S. As for maritime services, the trade has been developing very diversely. Our export to the North America doesn't really make up a substantial percentage. So the impact caused to the maritime services is not as significant as a result. Nevertheless, we noticed that the many mainland importers try to import raw materials from the Southeast Asian countries in order to create goods to be exported to the U.S. So we will definitely help our trade in arranging for ship routes and other arrangements.
Government bills. This council resumes the second reading debate on the